Hi, I'm Ruth, a women's health champion, therapeutic and a hormonal coach and a corporate wellness consultant.
Hi, I'm Faye, a specialist pelvic health physio for the NHS with a passion for helping people of all ages and backgrounds feel at home in their body. I'm also co-founder of the Pelvic Physios, and like many of you, navigating my own pelvic health journey.
And hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm also a clinical specialist physio in pelvic health. I run both an NHS and a private clinic with Faye called the Pelvic Physios. I love what I do and all the brilliant patients that I work with. And I also have first-hand experience. I am the proud owner of my very own vaginal prolapse. So there.
Marvellous. So welcome to Oops, I Peed My Pants podcast that's here to break the silence, smash the stigma and get real about female incontinence and pelvic floor health.
Each week, we'll dive into a real listener story. We'll share our thoughts, break down what's going on, and talk about practical ways to make life better. Expect expert advice, honest chats, and plenty of laughs along the way.
Brilliant. Yeah. And then after that, we're going to take a look at what is leaking this week. So this is where we're going to dive into the latest news, hot topics, anything making waves in the world of pelvic health. But first, it's my favourite part of the show. We're going to get into this week's listener story. So Ruth, again, she hasn't seen this one yet. So we're getting ready for her real-time reaction. So let's see what she makes of it.
Okay, I'm going to be reading this out. So I'm going to put my best storytelling voice on. So here we go. So, dear Ruth, Faye and Lizzie, thank you for starting this podcast. It's a relief to know that I'm not on my own. Once you get to middle age, your body starts to change and it can be so bloody embarrassing, particularly when you're with people who are not in the know like you. So thanks for making me feel less alone and seen. We've got you there for sure. My story starts at the end of a busy working week. I'd recently joined the gym and had booked a strength training class for that evening. I was late leaving work. I had changed into my gym kit and I needed a wee, but I was tight on time to get to the gym, so I held it. Oh God, I know where this is going for sure. I rushed into the class just in time. She didn't go for a wee. Now I live in a university city, which means this class was basically full of etogenic 20-somethings jumping around. The instructor, a dress-faced perky fitness goddess, handed me a 20 kg barbell for an overhead press. Sure, why not? God, that's heavy, isn't it? 20k.
Yeah.
First rep, I was fine. Second rep, oof, this is a bit heavy. Third rep, oh no, a tiny, suspiciously warm dribble. Oh no, on the third rep as well. I thought she was going to say the third set. She didn't even get to the third rep. I suddenly realised I was bursting for a wee. Panic set in. Do I drop the barbell? Do I casually moonwalk out of the room? Nope. Just full on sprinted to the loo like my life depended on it. Sweet relief. Crisis mostly averted, except for the undeniable wet patch in my knickers. Still, I decided to laugh it off. That's why we all wear black. That's why we all wear black.
Absolutely.
Black, not grey.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Let me finish. Made a little joke about my leak and was immediately met with 20 horrified, disgusting expressions. You could hear a protein shake drop. Apparently, bladder leakage is not the syllabus for these gym babies. I bet it's not. They've got another 10 years.
They've got no idea, have they?
They've got no bloody idea, have they? Honestly, it's frustrating because I really enjoy getting back into my exercise, but this whole incident knocked my confidence. I want to feel good in my body, not feel like I have to plan my workouts around my bladder. So ladies, help. Any tips, tricks to help my pelvic floor from betraying me mid-lift? I actually have to say she wasn't actually mid-lift, she was start lift, I think, with the 3 reps. Bit of background, I'm a mum of 41. Mum of 1, delivered via forceps, and I know I have a small bladder prolapse. So she knows she's got an issue.
Yeah.
So
yeah, what do you think really about that? It is, isn't it? What do you think about that story? How do you think it scores on the piometer?
Oh, brilliant.
Look, it's the piometer.
That
Can you
is
tell
it.
I used to be a
Before
teacher, got the laminator
that's
out.
too much.
You got your whiteboard,
Hey,
Martha.
before I score it, Faye, you're going to have to give me a little bit of a guide. Where are we with 1? What's the 1? Just quickly, go on.
1 out of 10 is the Phantom drip. 2 out of 10 is the tiny tinkle. 3, the sneaky spritz. When we get further on, 8 out of 10 is the full-on flood, or a 10 out of 10, absolute tsunami.
Tsunami. Well, she didn't have a tsunami, did she? Although I think it was quite, she was obviously, it was in a class and it was in a gym. But what's 3 or 4? I think we could be. I think this could be
4 out of 10 is the damp surprise, noticeable but not a total disaster.
I reckon this was a 4.
So we were going for a
Ooh.
4. What's the face on the 4?
Oh my God, I love that. What's number 5?
Maybe, definitely a 4. Definitely a 4, I think, on this. Between 4 and 5.
5 is the halfway hiccup. You felt it, you know it, but you're still in control.
Was she in control, do you think? No, I mean, was she in control?
No, that's a sprint to the toilet. I think the next lift.
It might be number 6, actually. The sudden surge, definitely wet, hoping it doesn't show.
I think
it's a 6 out.
I think a number 6 on our peometer for sure. Let's give her a number 6.
Yeah, I reckon a number 6.
No,
and it is, and that's
brilliant. I agree with you guys.
Funny, isn't it? But then it's really sad that she lost a bit of self-confidence. That's what the podcast's all about, isn't it? It's that the funny side, and then the little.
It was, all seriousness apart, all sort of laughter apart, from lifting weights to making you run for the loop, it really it captures those kind of unexpected challenges, isn't it, that women face when they want to get back into exercise, and that age group, post baby, in your 40s, your hormones are starting that period of disruption. Why did this happen, Faye? What's the trigger?
What we have here is a classic case of something called stress incontinence. And what that means is quite literally leaking under pressure. So if you imagine your bladder, we talked about before, is that muscly bag, and it fills with urine and it stretches, a bit like a balloon full of air. So she's got her full bladder because she's getting some strong urges that she needs a wee on the way to the class. Then when she lifts that weight above her head, that weight is transferred through her body, increases the pressure in her core, and that squeezes down on her bladder, basically. And then what would happen, probably, if she'd done this when she was 20, is that her pelvic floor muscles and the tissues below that would have been really strong and may have been strong enough to resist that pressure coming down. But as she's mentioned, she's 41. So we know that from your mid-30s, whether you've had any babies or not, that you're losing muscle mass each year. So there's going to be, and the rest of your tissues will be changing. So there's going to be that inherent weakness associated with age. And then she's also mentioned that she has birth with forceps. So we know that pregnancy, vaginal birth, and then instrumental birth can damage your pelvic floor muscle, and it can also stretch out the tissues in that area. And that's left her with a prolapse as well. So she's got like a structural weakness, some muscular weakness, and then the full bladder and the pressure on the top. It's just too much. It's game over, basically, for her.
I mean, that makes so much sense. That leaks like this aren't just physical, are they? They can really mess with your confidence. They can really sort of, once that's happened once, it knocks your confidence to actually get back in the gym, isn't it? Or you get, like, especially when you're doing group classes, it's just like a no-go, isn't it, for a lot of women?
Oh yeah, and I think, and it's such a shame because you're often busy, aren't we, right the way through those early childhood years, and just at the point where you think, oh, I'm just going to get back into the gym and have a bit of me time, get myself back together, and then it feels like a real slap in the face, doesn't it, when you then you're trying to not better yourself, but trying to better your health, and then something like that happens. But do you know, it is so common. So stress urinary incontinence, that type of urinary incontinence, is experienced by about 24% of women.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite a lot. If you look at the NICE guidance, I mean, it's pretty old now, so maybe it'd be a bit more. But and yeah, those leaks, they do lead to a loss of confidence, so that you either don't go to the gym or you really sort of doctor what you do. Like, you'll all see the ladies do the half jacks, and the sort of like, or they'll miss out the skipping station. So it really, it either stops them in the tracks completely, or they really have to modify what they're doing, and that's not okay, is it? So, because I think, we should be pouring money and resources into this, because women that are avoiding exercise, they are increasing the risk of mental health problems. We all know how great exercise is for your mental health. But then also, that physical side of it, increased risk of cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, colon cancers, type 2 diabetes. And then exercise is so good for the brain. We know for a fact that regular movement and coordination helps reduce chances of dementia. Really important, especially in postmenopausal ladies. And then also, if we can take it this far, it's a real bugbear of mine, is, if you're rushing to the toilet or struggling, that kind of thing, you are far more likely in your older age to rush and trip. And then how many ladies get hip fractures? Like, really, the knock-on effects of this are huge. I think, we need to batter on the NHS's door, and it costs them a fortune as well. So, and then you've got that sort of ladies don't understand what's happening, or aren't aware that there is something they can do about it. It's so frustrating. So we really do have to educate people about why it's happening and what they can do about it.
And I guess that kind of starts with educating women around, pelvic floor exercises and how to do them properly, doesn't it? That's the first thing. The first step is understanding. So how do you do your pelvic floor exercises properly, Lizzie?
Oh, wow. So there's lots of different ways that we sort of try. So Faye said it sometimes. I always think, what are words? Words are just whatever your brain interprets. So we try lots of different phrases. So the phrases that we tend to use, okay, are, well, first of all, let's backtrack a bit to explain where the pelvic floor muscles are. So it's a bowl of muscles that goes from the front to the back and side to side of the pelvis, and it wraps around your body's exit, basically, keeping it shut when you don't want it to. And when you want to go for a wee, it relaxes and allows you to empty your bladder and bowels. So when we're thinking about our pelvic floor exercises, they're up and inside us in the bladder. So cues, research has shown instructions work, some instructions work better than others. The ones that Faye and I tend to use in clinic are things like holding your wind and holding your wee. So if you're tightening around your back passage, like try not to fart, basically, and then holding up at the front as if you're like,
I'm doing mine now. Yeah. I'm holding up. I'm holding at the back.
Good. Well, hopefully then. So ideally, then holding wind and wee. Another one is, I love this one. I did get this off a great physio. Imagine with your back passage that you're pulling a tissue out of a packet, grabbing a tissue and pulling it out of a packet. So put that in your list of party tricks.
What about the lemon one? The lemon one was great.
About two opposite ones. I discovered a new one about as if you're squeezing a lemon with your vaginal muscles. That was one.
Squeezing it. Hey, I'm just thinking, just to tell our listeners here that I don't think Facebook will allow us to do any associated image. We'll probably, I don't think there'll be any instructions on this one, listeners. So don't worry. But these are really good, because I think a lot of women do struggle with that, and it's certainly not told. When you go to a gym or when you're in a group class, how often we just don't hear them say, "Are you doing your breathing, or are you breathing correctly when we're doing exercises?" No, sorry, I interrupted you, Lizzie.
No, it's fine. And also, you don't ever get taught. No one ever teaches you how to do pelvic floors, do they? Until you've got problems with it, and then that's got to be the worst time, right? And when people come into clinic, I say, "Well, what?" They say, "Oh, I do my pelvic floors all the time," and often, sometimes, people are kind of, I know that they're doing it right by what they explain. And then other times, do you know when you lie on your back with your knees bent and your feet on the floor and you do that bridging exercise?
Yes.
That is often misconstrued as a pelvic floor exercise. So there's all sorts. I think you read things, you listen to things, you imagine what it should be like in your head. And I think actually, discussing this within sort of professional forum, and they reckon we should be getting into schools and teaching kids age around about 12,
I was
starting
just thinking,
gently educating this
yeah,
from a
because we're
really
not.
early age.
At what point do you teach your patient, your ladies that you see? Do you give them guidance straight away when you see?
With pelvic floor wear?
Yeah.
I
What's
suppose it
standard? Is there a
depends.
standard? Is there standard information within the NHS or within your own clinic that you
Yeah,
hand out?
well, I suppose in terms of if somebody came in and said, right, I need to do my pelvic floor exercises because I'm, I don't know, leaking, got bladder problems. The first one would be go and see a pelvic health physio.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like a really bog standard prescription of exercises would be you've got to do it at least 3 times a day, especially for stress incontinence. You really need that intensity. So good 3 times a day, work it till it's tired. And then
Supported by research, isn't it, Lizzie? That's part of our guidelines.
Yeah.
Part of the
sorry.
NICE guidelines, and that's why pelvic floor exercises are our first line treatment.
Yeah.
And the reason you want to go and see a pelvic health physio is because we're specially trained to do internal examinations.
Yeah.
Because the muscles are internal, we just don't know if we're doing the right thing. We can't know completely if you're doing the right thing unless you have that examination. Obviously, there's times where that's not appropriate, and you know, people don't want to, and that's completely fine. But the prescription is always personalised to the person. So for some people, although it says the guidelines say 3 times a day for someone with stress incontinence, that may not be appropriate. You know, you're going to give a different prescription to someone who's had a really traumatic birth to someone who's an Olympic weightlifter, like you would if you were giving them general strengthening exercises. And that's why you see the specialist, so that you can get that individual prescription.
Yeah. Just quickly going back to our listener's story, because she was in the gym, and just something that crossed my mind. Do you think there should be more information in gyms around this? Because I cannot remember ever, and I've been going to all sorts of gyms over my lifetime, I can't remember ever seeing anything, a leaflet or a poster or anything about this. But that would be a really great place, wouldn't it, to engage with women?
Yeah, like in the free weight, in the weight section, or
Yeah.
somewhere where you kind of go leaking while lifting, and then signposting into a web page. You know, that's all it needs to do, isn't it? Or QR code. Maybe nobody would dare scan the QR code in case they've seen, but like hold that thought, Ruth.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. I can see a poster coming to my mind, so let's hold on to that thought. Because we can, seriously, let's hold on to that thought and then talk to one of our potential partners about this, because I think that's a really good idea. And I'm loving the QR code. And I will actually, because I'm a member of a local gym, a local county council gym, I will actually have a look at their app and see if they've got any content around this, on this topic. Right, okay, so Faye,
sorry, go on. We've gone slightly off topic, haven't we? Look at this. Couple of top tips, unless Faye, you want to do that. Top tips.
Well, no, I was just going to talk about our pelvic floor, the exercise, the only treatment.
Okay, yeah.
Go on, Lizzie, you finish off your top tips, and then I'll go on with the other treatments.
Yeah, let me finish the top tips. So, top tips things. So things that she perhaps could have, or that you need to avoid. Sorry. Top tips you need to avoid when you're doing your pelvic floors are make sure that you are pulling up from underneath. So holding that wind, holding that way. So it's not squeezing your bums. So if you're popping up and down on your seat, or your thighs are squeezing together, it is not that. We shouldn't be really pulling our tummy muscles in hard. And obviously you don't want that feeling that you're sort of bearing down or trying to push a poo out. And that is not uncommon, is it? So when people are not quite sure what they're feeling, they're just trying to get some kind of movement down there.
They're expecting a big movement because nobody's taught you. So, and that's why people come to us. But yes, Ruth, you're absolutely right. There are other treatment options. So if we look specifically at this case, the most obvious one is go for a wee first, isn't it? Bless you. Like if you've got a full bladder.
Empty your bladder before you go into the gym.
But, you know, other than the obvious, what else could I recommend to this lady? I'd want to have a look at how she's lifting. So I'd want to check, is she breathing, for example? Because
Yeah.
if you're breath holding when you lift something up, you're increasing the pressure inside of your abdomen, inside of your tummy, basically. And if you've got a weakness, like a prolapse or a weak pelvic floor, that's where the symptom's going to come. It's going to find your weakest point. I'd take her through how to lift using her pelvic floor to help her. So when we're young, we all have a reflex in our pelvic floor that, for example, if we cough, it automatically squeezes to support us. Unfortunately, that goes with age and with childbirth. So we can teach you to lift something and squeeze your pelvic floor at the same time. It's something called the knack. I'd look at, you can grade the exercise. So what that means is 20 kilos, like you said, Ruth, quite a heavy thing to start with, isn't it? Like, yes, we want to get you there 100%, but taking it back so that it's a little bit easier. So again, it gives your tissues time to accommodate. Maybe we need to look at other areas of the body, because if you've got weakness in your hips or your arms, maybe it's your pelvic floor that's bearing the brunt of it. So looking at holistically at the strength of the body, considering what you're drinking, we talked about that last time. And if we've looked at all those lifestyle things and techniques and it's not working, then we can start to look at more physical things such as pessaries. So pessaries are basically devices that occupy space within the vagina. You can imagine them a little bit like a tampon. And they've got all sorts of different shapes and sizes and materials they're made from. And essentially, ones that we'd use for stress incontinence close the bladder neck. So they put a little bit of pressure on the bladder neck. In fact, some people do put a tampon in to do that and use those during exercise. And if we go through all those options, and Lizzie mentioned this in her radio interview, that we can't help you as pelvic health physios, then we do have other people that we can send you to. And so we'd send you to a urogynecologist. And so that's a gynecologist that has a specialism within the area of bladders, basically, and they can look at medications and other procedures to help you. So there's loads of options, basically.
Excellent. So it's a great discussion, and I'm sure that we're going to revisit this over the next, over the next series. So there's lots to think about. And thank you. There's some really great takeaways there for our listeners. So now,
can I interject just quickly? And I know what the bit where we were sort of saying that lots of people do, and people do use tampons to go running. That's not what we recommend, is it, Faye? Just to clarify, I know what Faye meant. We don't recommend. We recommend using a pessary instead of that, just in case.
Right. Okay.
Like years and years ago, we did, didn't we, Faye? We'd go like, oh right, yeah, just run with that, and it was like the okay thing to do. But now we know it's better to have something that is
okay. All right. Yeah, that's well clarified.
Show you that's what Faye meant. Just to clarify.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Okay. That's a good shout there, Lizzie. Right, now it's time for what's leaking this week. So what is leaking this week? So The Guardian published an article titled, "If you wee yourself, you just rock on. Is incontinence inevitable for women who lift heavy?" It explores the prevalence of bladder leaks among women who lift heavy weights, highlighting how it's often dismissed as an inevitable consequence of training rather than a treatable issue. Experts emphasise that while leaks are common, they are not normal, and with the right pelvic floor training and support, women can lift confidently without fear of incontinence. Article quote, "If you wee yourself, just rock on." What do you think of this?
Oh, this is such a huge topic, isn't it? Both Faye and I are super interested in this, both because we both quite like weight training.
Yeah.
And Faye, thank you, Faye, got me back into weight training today. And so weight training is sometimes called strength training or resistance training. This is actually really key. So remember what Faye said about, whether we're, had children or not, or, whatever, when we're hitting our mid-30s, early to mid-30s, we are losing muscle mass. So actually for women in particular, maintaining muscle mass is really, really important. And especially if you think about menopause. I feel like I have a menopausal memory myself. I think it's like the first sort of 5-6 years post-menopausal, that's where the muscle mass really starts to drop off quite quickly.
Well, it's kind of when you go, there was some research recently, wasn't there, that you have those 2 points in your life where aging accelerates at 40, was it 44 and 60? So 60, so you want to be, I mean, 100%. Once you hit your 50s, it's super, super hard to maintain your muscle mass. You've really got to be lifting heavy. That's the trend, isn't it? You know, with Dr. Stacey Sims' research, lift heavy. So
lifting heavy, and you can, things like bone density and muscle mass, you can make quite a big difference, but you've got to be lifting heavy regularly. And I think it was over a 6-month period, the research I looked at, and then you start to see change in the bone density. But I'm going off on a tangent, but it is interesting. So it is huge, because we want women to lift, and we do know that in some gyms there is that concept, isn't there, that especially perhaps with the younger weightlifting community, if you're or with the male weightlifting community, like if you're not leaking, maybe you're not working hard enough. And I think that really needs addressing, doesn't it, Faye? Or in my humble opinion, it does anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. Another perspective from the article comes from the POGP. So they're a membership organisation for pelvic obstetric and gynecological physios. Bit of a mouthful. Lizzie and I are both members of that. And they talk about there being a lack of research in this area, which is so common, isn't it, in the field of female health in general, but definitely in the field of female exercise medicine, there's a real lack of research. So what they suggest is looking at this from a low tolerance perspective. So that low tolerance basically means how much pressure or stress can your body handle before you start to get symptoms. If you think about your pelvic floor like a trampoline, if you were jumping on it gently, then it's able to cope with that load. But if you that your trampoline in the garden, you get your kids go on it, and then your kids' friends go on it, and then maybe their dads and their mums all go on it. It's too much, isn't it?
It's a number 10. It's hitting a number 10 on the
Exactly. So it's going to start to struggle. So it's being overloaded, and in this case, the bladder pays the price.
Yes.
Sorry, I zoned out then for a minute. I was just really deeply in my thoughts about weightlifting. We do use sports medicine principles where we identify the weak areas and train those. Which isn't always the pelvic floor. So for example, you can only progress as quickly as your weakest muscle. So it could be the pelvic floor. So it might be that your arms and legs are totally capable, aren't they? Say of like pushing out the pounds, but if your pelvic floor is leaking, really ideally you've got to work at the pace of your pelvic floor, or
can be the other way around, can't it?
Totally. Hips, we know there's a huge link with hip strength and ability in pelvic floor, so sometimes it's a case of getting a bit more mobile, getting some of your other muscles a lot stronger,
moving before you go on. And that's really good advice. Like I like that quote where you should only work. What did you just say? You said you can only work as hard
as fast as your weakest muscle. I suppose. And then and you've got to remember as well, muscles just don't work in isolation. They are there. They're a team, aren't they? You know, teamwork makes the dream work. So that includes like pelvic floor, hip, back, whatever it is. So that's what's quite useful, I think, to work with somebody like us, to have a look at it holistically. So
it sounds that's certainly the approach that I take with my ladies, and with also my fitness, is I mix up the strength training with the Pilates as well, so to make sure that I'm getting, I'm not just doing the strength training, because it's just too much stress. Whereas if you do something like Pilates or the mobility work, you're getting those smaller muscles, you're getting those connections. So
absolutely
great. So for our listeners thinking, oh gosh, that's me, which I'm sure what's the first step?
So the first thing I want to say for them is, this is really common, but it's not normal. I think that's going to be a huge message across the whole podcast, isn't it? Common but not normal. So hang on to that. Next, don't panic. I say it's really common. There are so many solutions. Faye's gone through loads of brilliant ones today. And if you are leaking when you're exercising, or particularly weightlifting, it really is a sign to check in with your body. You can try and modify your movements. So Do you squat a bit smaller with your legs a bit narrower? Do you reduce your weight? Do you work on your breath? Are you holding your breath? And I think if you're making those, or have you had a wee? Have you had a wee before you do it? If you're making these little adjustments and it's still not feeling great, or you're still leaking, then like you really do need to go and see a specialist pelvic health physio.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really want to come back to the point that exercise is a really important part of a healthy lifestyle, isn't it? Like Lizzie just went through all the benefits of exercise. It's absolutely crucial. And if leaking is getting in the way of that, then it's something that needs to be addressed. And you can get that addressed by either seeing your GP or going straight to a pelvic health physio. You don't have to just rock on and ignore it. You can be strong and leak free.
Yeah.
I
my
love
Yeah.
that quote. Strong and leak free should be the goal. Absolutely, absolutely. And listening to your body and not being afraid to kind of speak up as well if there's a trainer. I think that's really important, you know, to normalize the conversation around it. There's lots you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely go to the loo and learn how to breathe.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with your pelvic health, then a pelvic health physiotherapist can help. So ladies, great takeaways, brilliant. How do we want our listeners to get involved with the show?
We want to hear from you, dear listeners. Please submit your stories and questions via email. So that's oopsipedmypantspodcast@gmail.com, or via the Facebook community, Oops, I Peed My Pants Podcast. And there's also a link on our website, isn't there, Ruth?
Yes, there is a link
for
on
a
our
form.
website.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So whether you're looking for advice, just a bit of a laugh, or sometimes just to feel a bit less alone, we've absolutely got you on this podcast.
Excellent. So ladies, let's frame the narrative around incontinence together. All the details are in our show notes below, so please subscribe now, join our Facebook group, and let's break the silence, one laugh and leak at a time. So we will see you in the next episode. Have a great week, and yeah, thank you for listening.